The photographs appeared on Minju's phone at 2:47 a.m., dragging them both from sleep. Judith woke to the blue glow of his screen illuminating their bedroom, trying to control his harsh breathing in such a violent manner. She pushed herself up on one elbow, pulling the silk sheets around her waist, and watched him scroll through image after image of her. The dress, the balcony, and her face caught in profile, laughing at something Adi had said, and each photo has been tagged with metadata she didn't understand but recognized as a threat. How many? She asked under a hoarse and sleepy voice. 17 platforms, 23 separate uploads, he muttered without looking at her. Someone wanted to make sure the world saw you. Which world? She asked, faking a surprised face, but deep down she knew it was none other than the underground network where information traveled faster than money and cost just as much. Where photographs of a Mafia boss's wife in a memorable dress became currency. Minju stood, pulling on clothes with military efficiency. Get dressed. We're leaving. Leaving for where? She asked, raising a brow. Somewhere they can't sketch you from memory because you're not fucking there. The profanity landed between them because he rarely ever cursed at her. He'd always reserved that language for subordinates and enemies, and the fact that the line was blurring should have scared her more than it did. But Judith stayed in bed, pulling the sheets higher. No. He froze, wearing a half-buttoned shirt. What did you say? I said no. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her voice level. Running confirms I was wrong to be seen. Hiding confirms I'm a possession you need to protect. And I'm not doing either. She sniffed. This isn't about principle. Everything is about principle when you've spent 3 years becoming a ghost. She cut him off, climbed out of bed now, standing in the tank top and shorts she slept in, feeling simultaneously vulnerable and defiant. You want to know what's really dangerous, Minju? Not the dress, not being visible. It's spending so long invisible that you forget you exist at all. That's how you die without anyone noticing. My mother was visible once. His voice dropped to something cold and factual. For 6 hours. That's how long it took between someone recognizing her at a market and her body being found in the Han River. 6 hours. She'd just gone to buy fish for dinner. The detail gutted her. I know, Judith said softly. You've told me. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that happened. But I'm not her. And this isn't 20 years ago. And maybe the lesson isn't that women should hide. Maybe it's that the system that killed her is what needs to die. Idealism is expensive in our world, he calmly said. So is compliance. She moved toward him, closing the distance he'd put between them. Do you know what I did today? Before the party? I went to the coffee shop on the corner, the one I go to every Thursday, and the barista smiled when she saw me. She paused, then continued. Actually smiled, Minju, because I've been memorable enough for her to recognize me 3 weeks in a row, and for 5 minutes I felt human. Not safe, not invisible, not Mrs. Choi, just human. That dress was me refusing to apologize for that feeling. His jaw worked and his muscles jumped, and now that barista can describe you to anyone who asks, and those patterns can become leverage. Then kill the barista. The words came out sharper than she intended, edged with 3 years of accumulated rage. Isn't that how this works? Eliminate anything that makes your wife identifiable? Maybe we should burn down the whole neighborhood, make sure no one remembers my face. Don't be dramatic, he muttered with a forced grunt. Don't be a coward. She was in his space now, close enough to see the exhaustion carved into his features. He looked older than 34 in the pre-dawn darkness. You married me because I was different, because I challenged you, because 3 years ago you said you were tired of women who existed only to agree with you. What exactly happened to that man? He learned that love makes you vulnerable. Minju's hand came up, hovering his fingers near her cheek, but not quite touching. Every time I look at you, I'm calculating the 1,000 ways someone could hurt me by hurting you. Do you understand that? The dress isn't the problem. My capacity to care is. Then stop caring. She said it knowing it was impossible, watching him flinch. Send me away. Divorce me. Let me go back to being nobody's target and nobody's ghost. At least then I'd be free. You don't mean that, he calmly said. I don't know what I mean anymore. And that was true, terrifyingly true. She'd woken up that morning certain of her defiance, righteous in her anger. But now, looking at the photographs on his phone, evidence of her rebellion catalogued and distributed, she felt the first stirrings of genuine fear. Not of death, exactly. Of something more insidious. The realization that visibility might cost more than she'd calculated. I just know I can't keep living like this. Half alive, half present, always one dress away from disaster. His phone buzzed again, then immediately again. Minju glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted into something colder. Seorin's calling an emergency meeting. Someone's already making inquiries about you, offering to ensure your safety for the right price. Which means, she raised her gaze to his face, which means you've been identified as leverage. Congratulations, you're now valuable to people I've spent years trying to avoid. He moved past her, grabbing his jacket. Get dressed, and please put on something forgettable. We leave in 10 minutes. I'm not going anywhere. She raised her voice. He turned back, and the look on his face stopped her breath. You're right, he said quietly. Running confirms weakness, so we don't run. But you don't leave this penthouse without a security detail. You don't wear anything distinctive, and you definitely don't make public appearances until I've neutralized the threat. That's the same as hiding. Her gaze dropped. That's the same as staying alive. He checked his watch, Patek Philippe, the very timepiece that cost more than most people earned in a year. Everything he wore, everything he touched, screamed power and wealth and danger. She'd been seduced by that once. Now she felt suffocated by it. The meeting's in 40 minutes. You can attend or not, your choice. But understand that every man in that room will be deciding your value as a bargaining chip. What you wear, what you say, and how you present yourself. All of it becomes something they'll use. Then I should make an impression. Judith moved toward her closet with racing mind. If they're going to value me, they should value me correctly. Judith? Minju furrowed his brows. You said it's my choice whether to attend or not. She pulled the crimson dress from its hanger, feeling the cold from the silk against her palms. I'm choosing to attend, and I'm choosing to be remembered while I do it. She added, That dress started this, he said. No. She turned to face him, holding the fabric against her body. Your rules started this. Your organization's belief that women are liabilities unless they're invisible started this. That dress is just the first time I refused to cooperate with my own erasure. Minju stared at her for a long moment, and she watched something shift behind his eyes. Some internal war between the man who loved her and the boss who needed control. If you wear that dress to the meeting, you're declaring yourself a player instead of a piece. Do you even understand that? You're saying you're willing to gamble everything, including your life, on the belief that visibility equals power. He extended an arm across the empty air. I'm saying invisibility has already killed me. She met his gaze without flinching. At least this way, if I die, someone will remember I existed. He let out a short, bitter, and humorless laugh. You want to be remembered? Fine. But memory works both ways, Judith. The same people who remember your face will remember how to find you. The same dress that makes you visible makes you vulnerable. And when someone inevitably tries to use you against me, when they put a gun to your head or a knife to your throat, don't expect mercy just because you made yourself pretty first. I don't expect mercy. She moved past him toward the bathroom, trailing the silk of the dress against hardwood. I expect acknowledgement. I expect to matter. And if that costs me everything, at least I'll die as someone instead of no one. She closed the bathroom door before he could respond, leaning against it as her hands trembled. The dress hung from the hook, swaying slightly in the air conditioning's current and render. In the mirror, her reflection looked fractured. Brown skin against white marble, African features in a Korean penthouse, a woman caught between worlds, trying desperately to exist fully in at least one of them. Outside the door, she heard Minju making calls. Rapid Korean, barking out harsh commands, mobilizing security, alerting his inner circle and preparing for war. All because she'd worn a dress that refused to be forgotten. Judith turned on the shower, letting steam fill the bathroom until her reflection disappeared completely. Then she began getting ready for a meeting that would either validate her gamble or prove him right about the cost of being seen. Either way, she was done being invisible. even if visibility killed her. The conference room sat on the 47th floor of a building that officially housed import-export operations and unofficially laundered half of Seoul's underground economy. Judith had been here twice before, once for her wedding reception, once for a funeral. Both times she'd worn beige and kept her mouth shut. Today she wore crimson and arrived 5 minutes late, and the conversation died the moment she entered. 12 men, because it was always men, turned to watch her cross the threshold, shifting their various expressions ranging from surprise to calculation to barely concealed hostility. Min Yu sat at the head of the table, carrying the expression of an impenetrable mask on his face, but she caught the way his knuckles whitened against the armrest. So-rin, perfectly composed in her grey suit, occupied the chair to his right, but her eyes widened fractionally when she registered the dress. "Mrs. Choi," So-rin smoothly called out, recovering first. "We weren't expecting you." "I myself wasn't expecting to become tonight's agenda." Judith moved toward the only empty chair, deliberately positioned at the far end of the table, as far from Mingyu as possible. A test, maybe, or a statement about where she ranked in the hierarchy. She sat anyway, crossing her legs slowly, letting the silk catch the overhead lighting. "But here we are," she added confidently. An older man, Park, one of the sector bosses, cleared his throat. "With respect, this is organizational business, sensitive matters that concerns me directly, apparently," she smiled without warmth, "unless the photographs being circulated are of someone else wearing my grandmother's dress design." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Minju leaned forward, controlling his voice, but it still carried an edge that made grown men nervous. "We were discussing security protocols, how to mitigate the exposure and ensure I disappear again," Judith interrupted, watching his jaw clench. "Make sure the liability becomes invisible? I'm curious, what's the standard procedure when a wife becomes too memorable? Relocation? Seclusion? Or do we skip straight to the permanent solutions?" "Nobody's suggesting," Se-rin cut in. "Aren't they?" Judith's gaze swept the table, cataloguing reactions. Park looked uncomfortable. 2 younger men, enforcers, judging by the scars on their face, seemed almost amused. A thin man in wire-rimmed glasses, the organization's information broker, watched her with the intensity of someone assessing value. "Because from where I'm sitting, this feels very much like a meeting about damage control, about how to handle a problem, and I'd like to know exactly what kind of problem you've decided I am." "You're not a problem," Minju said flatly. "The situation is the problem. The situation being that people saw me. The situation being that 17 different intelligence networks now have detailed imagery of my wife in a dress distinctive enough to be described by a blind man." His control was slipping, and his voice was rising. "The situation being that 3 separate organizations have already reached out offering protective services, which is code for we know where she is and could grab her any time. The situation being that you've made yourself the most valuable bargaining chip in Seoul, and I have exactly 0 good options for keeping you safe without confirming you're worth taking." The silence that followed felt explosive. Judith forced herself to breathe evenly, to keep her hands relaxed in her lap even as her pulse hammered. "Then maybe the solution isn't keeping me safe. Maybe it's making me too expensive to touch." Park let out a sharp and disbelieving laughter. "Too expensive? Mrs. Choi, with respect, you're not." "Not what? Not valuable? Not dangerous?" She leaned forward, addressing him directly. "You're right. I'm not. I'm a wife who wore a pretty dress to a party. But you're all treating this like I've committed treason, which means the dress isn't the real problem. The real problem is that your entire system depends on women being forgettable, on wives existing as shadows, and the moment one of us refuses, the moment one of us demands to be visible, the whole structure gets threatened." "That's not," the information broker started. "It's exactly that." Se-rin's voice cut through, surprising everyone. The lawyer's expression remained neutral, but Judith caught something shifting behind her eyes. "Mrs. Choi is correct. The dress itself is meaningless. What matters is the precedent. If she can be visible without consequence, it calls into question every security protocol we've built around organizational wives and families." "Security protocols that keep people alive," Minju interjected sharply. Security protocols that keep people controlled, Judith countered. Let's be honest about what we're protecting. One of the enforcers, younger with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, spoke up. Maybe she's got a point, boss. My wife asks me all the time why she can't go anywhere, not do anything, and frankly speaking, it gets depressing watching someone stop existing. Then maybe you married the wrong woman, Park snapped. This life requires sacrifices. Sacrifices you don't have to make, Judith noted. I notice all of you are very visible, very public. You attend galas, conduct business, exist in the world without apologizing for it. The sacrifice only runs in one direction. Park's face reddened. Because we're not liabilities. You're the biggest liabilities of all. She was standing now, not sure when she'd risen, and the dress continued to freely flow around her. You're the ones making enemies, creating risks, building empires on violence and corruption, but somehow your wives pay the price for your choices. We hide so you can be seen. We disappear so you can matter. And if we dare suggest that's unfair, we're told it's for our own protection. It is for your protection, Mingyu said, and the pain in his voice made her hesitate. You think I like this? You think I want you locked away? I wake up every morning calculating who wants to hurt me badly enough to hurt you. Every decision I make factors in your safety. Every enemy I acquire becomes a potential threat to your life. That's not control. Judith, that's terror. Then maybe you're in the wrong business. She raised a finger pointing it towards him, hanging the accusatory and impossible words there. Mingyu's phone buzzed. Then So-rin's. Then 3 others simultaneously. The information broker checked his screen first, and his face went carefully blank in a way that signaled bad news. We have a new development, he said quietly. The Choi organization just sent a message through back channels. They're requesting a sit-down, tomorrow in neutral territory. About what? Minju's voice had gone arctic. About ensuring Mrs. Choi's well-being. They're suggesting a protection arrangement and, well, supplementing their resources into ours in exchange for certain considerations. Judith's stomach dropped. Considerations meaning what? So-rin answered, using a clinically precise tone. Meaning they want leverage. Access to our operations in exchange for not making you a target. It's a sophisticated shakedown since they're not threatening to harm you. They're offering to help protect you from threats they'll create if we refuse. That's... Judith struggled for words. That's insane. I wore a dress. I didn't commit espionage. You became identifiable, the broker said, not unkindly. In our world, that's the same thing. Park stood, addressing Mingyu directly. This is what happens when wives don't follow protocol. Now we're compromised because she wanted to feel special. Say that again. Judith's voice came out colder than she'd known she was capable of. Say I wanted to feel special, as if basic human dignity is vanity, as if existing as more than property is selfishness. That's not what I... It's exactly what you meant. She moved around the table, closing the distance between them. Park was taller, broader, probably armed, but she didn't care. You're angry because I disrupted your system, because I reminded everyone that wives are people, not possessions, and now you have to acknowledge that the structure you've built requires our erasure, that your power depends on our powerlessness. Park looked at Minju. Are you going to let her speak to me like this? She can speak however she wants, Minju said quietly. She's the one whose life is being negotiated. The admission stunned them both. Judith turned to face her husband, seeing him clearly for maybe the first time in months. He looked exhausted, very exhausted. What do you want me to do? She asked, dropping the anger, letting him hear the genuine question beneath. Tell me what compliance looks like, Minju. Tell me how invisible I need to be. Because I've tried, for 3 years I've tried, and it's killing me in ways that have nothing to do with rival organizations or security threats. It's killing me from the inside. Before he could answer, So-rin's phone rang. She answered and listened for 30 seconds before her expression darkened with each word. When she hung up, she looked directly at Judith. Someone leaked the photos to a gossip site, mainstream media, not underground channels. So you're trending on social media, and Korean netizens are trying to identify you. They think you're an actress or a model. Holy Jesus, one of the enforcers muttered loudly. It gets worse, So-rin continued. The dress design, the gold threading pattern, Matches a style only produced by one artisan in Lagos, so people are already tracing it back, trying to find the creator, which means they're building a profile. I'm afraid they're crowdsourcing your identity. Judith felt the room tilt. This wasn't underground intelligence anymore. How long until they connect her to me? Minju asked. Could be hours, could be days, but it's inevitable now. So-rin looked at Judith with something that might have been sympathy. The dress is now famous, and you're about to be too. The younger enforcer brutally let out a sharp and disbelieving laugh. Boss, your wife just became a celebrity. How the hell do we handle that? We don't. Park's voice carried finality. We shut it down by scrubbing the photos, and Mrs. Choi goes into protective custody until this blows over. Judith surprised herself with certainty. No, that's exactly the wrong move. If I disappear now, it confirms there's something to hide. It makes searching for me interesting. But if I stay visible and true to control the narrative... You're not a PR problem, Minju interrupted. You're my wife, and I'm not letting you gamble with your life just to prove a point. It's not a gamble if I'm already at risk. She moved to stand beside him, letting her hand rest on his shoulder, the first physical contact they'd shared since the argument. His body was already rigid with tension, thrumming with barely controlled fear. Listen to me. Really listen. The dress made me visible. The photos made me identifiable. But the media attention? That might actually protect me, because now I'm not just a mafia wife. I'm a mystery, a story, and people protect stories. Or exploit them, So-rin said quietly. Then we exploit them first. Judith was thinking fast now. We give them a narrative that makes me untouchable, not the boss's wife, that invites danger. Something else. Something that explains the dress, the event, as well as the visibility without connecting me to the organization. Like what? The information broker asked, leaning forward with interest. Like... Judith pulled the idea from desperation. Like I'm launching a fashion line, or heritage designs, or even African-Korean fusion. The dress was a preview and the party was networking. So basically, I'm a designer. The silence that followed felt different but thoughtful. That could work, So-rin said slowly. It explains the distinctive styling, justifies future visibility and, more importantly, gives you a public identity that's separate from the organization. It also makes you more visible and exposed, Minju countered. I'm already exposed, Judith said. At least this way I control what they see. Park scoffed. This is ridiculous. We're an organization, not a fashion house. You want us to what? Stage a fake business launch by creating a company that doesn't exist? Actually, the information broker said thoughtfully, we laundered money through dozens of legitimate businesses. A fashion boutique would be plausible, and who knows, it might even be profitable. You're not seriously considering this? Park incredulously looked around the table, but Judith could see others warming to the idea. The younger enforcer was nodding. So-rin had pulled out her tablet, already taking notes. Even Mingju's expression had shifted from absolute refusal to something more complicated. It's insane, he said finally. It's survival, Judith countered. His hand found hers on his shoulder, lacing his fingers through hers with desperate pressure. If this goes wrong, if even one person connects you to the organization through this, then I'll be exactly visible and vulnerable where I am now. At least this way I'm visible on my terms. The door burst open without warning, forcing everyone to reach for weapons. Aide stumbled through, with panic and something else flushed all over his face. I need to talk to you, he said, looking at Judith. Then, registering the room full of armed men, all of you. There's something I did, something you need to know about those photos. Minju was on his feet instantly. What did you do? Artie's eyes darted between them, and Judith felt her blood go cold even before he spoke. I thought I was helping. Her cousin's voice cracked as he spoke. I thought if I showed someone how exposed she was, if I proved the dress was dangerous, you'd make her stop. Who did you show? Judith whispered. Minjun, from the Choi organization. We grew up together, I thought. His voice broke. I thought he'd just scare you. Tell his boss to warn Mingyu. I didn't know he'd distribute them. I didn't know it would go this far. The room erupted. Park lunged for Adi and had to be physically restrained by two enforcers. Minju's face went white with rage. So-rin was already on her phone, as her reflexes for damage control came kicking in. But Judith just stood there, looking at her cousin, her family, the one person in Seoul she'd trusted fully, and felt something inside her calcify into something harder. "You sold me out," she said quietly, "to prove I needed protection, and you made me a target to teach me a lesson about safety?" I didn't mean A reached for her, and she stepped back. "Don't." The word came out sharp enough to draw blood. "Don't touch me. Don't explain. And don't apologize." Minju's cold and absolute voice cut through the chaos. "Get him out and lock him down. Nobody talks to him without my explicit approval." Two enforcers moved forward, grabbing Aid by the arms. He struggled weakly, still trying to meet Judith's eyes. "I was trying to protect you. You have to believe." "I don't have to believe anything anymore," Judith said. "Not you, not this system, not anyone who thinks protection and control are the same thing." They dragged Aid out, still echoing his protests down the hallway until a door slammed shut. The remaining men looked to Minju for direction, but he kept on aimlessly staring at Judith. "So," she said into the ringing silence, "are we launching a fashion line? Or am I just accepting that everyone I know will eventually sell me out for my own good?" Sorin spoke first. "We launch the line, create the company, and build the narrative. It's the only move that makes sense now." "Agreed," the information broker added. "We're past the point of invisibility, so forward momentum is our only option." Minju looked around the table, seeing consensus forming, then back to his wife, standing there in her crimson dress. "You understand what this means?" he asked quietly. "You're choosing permanent visibility, and there's no going back from this." "There was no going back the moment I put on this dress," Judith replied. "I just didn't realize it yet." He nodded slowly, crossing his features with something resigned and almost admiring. "Then we do this right and make you famous enough that touching you becomes impossible. Or expensive enough that nobody tries," Sorin added. Park stood abruptly, pushing back from the table. "This is insanity. You're letting her rewrite every protocol we have because she threw a tantrum." "I'm adapting to changed circumstances," Minju interrupted, "which is what keeps organizations alive. Sit down or leave. Your choice." Park left, slamming the door behind him. Nobody else moved. "All right," Sorin said, pulling up documents on her tablet. "Let's build a designer. Who do we know in fashion? What resources can we mobilize? How quickly can we fabricate a backstory that holds up to scrutiny?" Judith sat back down, only half listening as they planned her fake future, while Mingyu watched her across the table with an expression she couldn't quite read.